shared about the resurrection and the power that lies in it. And I know when I hear something good, I have to respond. So would you rise to your feet? And as we worship one more time, would you allow your heart, allow your mind to respond to the miracle that we have in a God that is not dead but alive? Amen.
Are you guys ready to keep celebrating that Jesus is alive? He is the reason. You are God, and we lift you up. Keep singing, keep praising. We won't stop. We're the only one. You're worthy of all your glory. There is no other. You are forever.
Ask again, does anybody have some joy this morning? Awesome. All right. It's so great to see all of you. If you're here for the first time with us, welcome. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us. And if you're thinking, what are all these crazy people that are moving around, singing like crazy? What is going on with these people? I'll tell you what is going on. The same thing that goes on when the day comes that the Dodgers finally win the World Series. And when the Lakers win, the championships again, it's going to happen. We have a God that 2,000 years ago won the biggest victory. And that was the victory over death. See, there is no power greater on this earth than the power of death. It takes all of us. Just today, or kind of today, but Easter Sunday in Sri Lanka, some of you might have seen the news. Terrorists went to a whole bunch of churches and hotels as well, and literally killed hundreds of people. They lost their lives on Easter Sunday. And you and I look at that, and obviously there's immense sadness for the lives lost, for the people, the family, the friends that lost their loved ones. But man, I just thought, if you're going to take the life of anybody, take the life of a Christian, because that person has hope of where their eternity is going to be, because they know that they have a God who is alive. And that death is not the final answer for us. And so, while death might be on this earth the most powerful thing, there is one more thing that is powerful than death, and that is Jesus. He has won the victory over death. And that is why we celebrate like we celebrate. And in fact, we celebrate Easter once a year, but the truth is, every Sunday we get together only exists because of a God who is alive. It only exists because he rose from the dead. And as you walked in today, you passed through the tomb today in that hallway. And a bunch of you were here on Good Friday. We had a great service here a couple nights ago. And but coming in today, you might have noticed the words life, or vida in Spanish, life in English, in that tomb as you were coming through. Because we have this simple phrase today. Everybody say it with me. Say death to life. Everybody say that. Death to life. That we can move from death into the life of God. And that is what God has available for each and every one of us here today. Well, before you take your seats, we got a lot going on, a lot to do today. But before you do that, why don't you just look around, say hi to a couple people around you. You don't have to give away your social security or credit card info or anything like that. Just say a quick hello and be a little friendly. And then you can be seated after you do that. Once again, I am so happy to see all of you here today. It's a good day to be together. Like I said, we got a few different things going on. In just a minute, we're going to watch a special video. After the video, where we just kind of talk a little bit about people's lives that have been impacted, I'm going to be doing a special song with a few people up here. And I'll explain that in a minute. And then we got a spoken word at the end of our service today. So we got a whole bunch of good stuff going on. And I know they already announced it, but if you're here for the first time, get excited for the free coffee, because it's not like free like just in a percolator coffee, all right? We have professional barista making everything happen over there. So it is good stuff. Good stuff. And apparently members of his team already consider themselves professional baristas as well. So, yeah, it's good. But I'm so excited to have all of you here today. Watch the screen if you can.
My name's Joanna. I accepted Christ when I was 14 years old. Around 17, 18, I began to party and just go out, and my mother was not agreeing with that. So I got kicked out of home, and I went to live with my boyfriend of the time, which is my husband now. Then at the age of 20, I had my daughter, and she was born with a hip dislocation. It's very rare, and the doctor said that she would have to be walking with a limp. It was so scary to hear those words, and I just began to think, well, what's going on, what's going to happen, or can she be healed, or how is this going to affect my daughter? It's a scary place to be at. You know, you're a first-time mom, and they tell you your daughter's dislocated hips, and you know, you don't know what to do. I went to City Life. I began my journey there again with God, and began to pray for my daughter and ask for prayer. A year went by of prayer, and I went one day to my mom's church where they were having a healing service, and I took my daughter and we prayed for her. And that week my daughter had her doctor's appointment, and I knew that God had healed her, so I was anxious to know what the doctor was going to tell me. The doctor gives her x-rays and sees the x-rays and says, your daughter has been completely healed. And at the moment he used these words, this is a miracle. And my mom and I, we just start to cry because I knew that God had healed her, and the prayer that I had been doing for a year worked. And I tell him, yes, it is a miracle. Since God did this miracle in my daughter's life, I've never parted from him. Life has brought a lot of ups and downs, but I know that every time that I go through a trial, God has made me stronger, and I wouldn't be able to do life without him. Just knowing that he has raised from the dead and he has come out victorious at the end, I know that I will in any hard circumstances that I've been going through or will go through. I know that God is at my right hand, and anything that I go through with him, I'll be fine.
I actually grew up going to church, so I can say that my relationship with Jesus is something that developed from a very early age, and I'm very thankful for that. I think one area in my life where I was a little lacking was my relationships with people. And growing up, I grew up very much like a keep to yourself, don't share too much about your life, people don't really want to know about your problems. And I carried that mindset into like my adulthood. And I can say when I started coming here, it wasn't out of a bad place, but I didn't really build many relationships.
I am definitely thankful for the role models that I had in my life, and the number one for me were my parents. The relationship that they have at home, that carried out to in my life, and how I saw them grow up and handle situations, and how God had impacted their lives so they can live out their life through us and through my brother and my sister. And I think that's what's led me to have the life that I have now.
Looking back, I can see now that even though I didn't have the best models of what a healthy relationship should look like growing up, there was some value to that, in that it helped me to be able to identify something good when I saw it later on in my adult life. And when I got into a point in my life where I decided that I was going to open up and create a space for other people to build into my life, I'm thankful that I did that. And it was an intentional effort, and allowing other people into my life helped me see the value of community and healthy relationships, and that's something that I value very much now.
What I love about our relationship is that we're always complimenting each other. We're always helping each other be better. Spiritually, we're always trying to focus on letting God be the center of our relationship. Not spiritually, we're always helping each other. How we can be better for one another, how we can help each other out, balance each other out. And that is something that I'm really thankful for. And it's just simply because, I let God into my life. We let God into our lives. And that's what I love about our relationship.
And God is... Put this on. There we go. And we are here watching stories like that because God does real change in people's lives. He does real transformation with people. Paul the Apostle, he said, in one of his letters that he wrote to a church, he said, listen, if our God just died and he's still dead today, if he just died and that's it, that's all, then there is no point to anything that we are doing. We might as well just pack it up and go home and call it a day. And I would feel the same way too. But he goes on to say, but here's the reality. Our God is alive. And because he's alive, there is reason to all that we are doing. Today, this song, I got Fernando's going to be singing with me, and Irene, who's playing on the flute, was one that I wrote a few weeks ago. From the perspective of Jesus on the cross, and what he was viewing and what he was thinking about as he looks at what he was doing on that cross and the life that he was about to bring to us. I see a light shining for me. There's a reason for this pain I endure for humanity.
Freedom and grace.
to you. Could you look at somebody and just tell them his life he gives to you? So good. You know, I have a few words I want to share with you this morning, and then we have one or two more things at the end. But I find it so interesting as I was thinking about what to share with each and every one of you this morning. I found a particular story interesting, and it's one that's captivated me honestly, for years and years and years. I've maybe preached on it one time, maybe. But it's a story of Mary who shows up to the grave, to the tomb, where Jesus was supposed to be. And when she shows up to that grave, she finds that Jesus is not there. But her mind didn't immediately go to, oh, he rose from the dead. Oh, he's alive. Her mind went to something else. And so often, and it's a picture of us, we kind of create our own perceptions of maybe who we think God is or what God is doing. And hopefully today, we can gain a new perspective on who God is and what he's doing in each and every one of our lives. I want to pray, and then I'm going to jump into the story in the book of John. Let me pray. Jesus, I thank you so much for each and every person that has come here this morning on Easter morning. A great opportunity and a great day to celebrate the life that you give to each and every one of us. And God, I pray that you would speak to each and every one of our hearts, that you would do something new today. And that, God, you would allow us and help us to participate in this life that you have given to us, to participate fully, to experience your abundant life. Jesus, we pray in your name. And everybody says, Amen. Amen. Amen means yes, or let it be so. The story is found in the book of John. And in this book, chapter 20, verses 11 to 16, it says this: Mary was standing outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. Everybody say, had been lying. Which means that his body was no longer there. And they say, dear woman, why are you crying? The angels asked. Because they have taken away my Lord, she replied, and I don't know where they have put him. She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. Goes on to say, dear woman, he asks, why are you crying? Who are you looking for? She thought he was the gardener. Imagine being Jesus and being called the gardener. Sir, she said, if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him. And all of a sudden, Jesus says one word, only one word, the name, Mary. Can everybody say Mary? Mary. He calls her out by name. She turned to him and cried out, Rabboni, which is Hebrew for teacher. She has an immediate recognition of who Jesus is after he calls her out by name. You know, I am part of a community of believers, including you guys, that believes that we have a God who has won the greatest victory. And I know I mentioned sports a little bit ago, but you know, some of you are soccer people in the room. Where are the soccer people in the room? Any soccer people? All right, like 5. Okay. All right. I figured there'd be more than that. Don't know what's going on. But some of you are baseball people. Where are the baseball people at? Any of you in the room? Wow, that was like even less than soccer. What's going on? I was watching the Dodgers this week, though, man. They've got this. They're doing pretty good right now. They got into first place this last week, and not only that, they're on a roll at home with. They're about to break or tie a record for consistent home runs at every game at home. Anyways, we're not here to talk about baseball, but you know, I've been paying attention. Okay, who are the basketball fans in the room? Woo! You know what? We just had 8:30 service this morning in Spanish. Where there were more basketball fans than there are right now in this room. I don't know what is going on. I figured there'd be like more soccer fans in that one, but you know, something is happening. But you know, we love it when our team wins, right? We all love to win. We love winners. We want to win. And here we have a situation where, and it's really interesting because when Mary shows up, she didn't realize that she had already won. She didn't realize that God had already risen from the dead. She didn't realize that the reason Jesus was not in the grave was not because somebody stole him or took the body. Can you imagine that for a second? I mean, think about this. If you have a loved one who is in the grave, right? You know, a loved one that passed away, no matter who it is, a parent, a family member, friend, whatever, and you know what cemetery they're in. And if one day you decided to visit the cemetery, go to their grave, and all of a sudden you find that the plaque or the stone or the whatever has been taken away, and the hole was dug up, and the casket was removed, and there is nothing there. How many of you would not freak out if that happened? And you'd be like, what is going on? But see, the problem with Mary was she had already heard from Jesus that he was going to rise from the dead. But when she shows up, she still doesn't get it. She doesn't realize it. It's like winning the lottery but not knowing that you're the winner. I think I heard it actually just a few weeks ago that there was a lottery winner of, I don't know how many millions, but a boatload of millions of dollars, and that person had not yet claimed that the ticket was theirs, which means they had gone along the way, bought a ticket, placed it somewhere, or misplaced it somewhere, or threw it away, or who knows. How crazy would it be to know that you're a lottery winner, but you don't have access to it, or to have won it, but not know that you have won it? And Mary was the equivalent winner of a giant lottery, right? Jesus, God, being alive in the flesh. And she had no idea. And she's looking at the tomb going, yeah, I think somebody stole him. I think, yeah. And here's the crazy part about that belief, because it didn't even make sense, right? It made no sense. Because this tomb was not a regular tomb. I've been to Israel. I have seen cemeteries in Israel. I know how they're laid out. But this is a tomb. This is not a cemetery. This is a tomb with a giant stone that has been rolled in front of it in order to close in that which is on the inside. And a tomb that had Roman soldiers guarding it. And when she shows up, the best option she can come up with is somebody came, took away the guards, moved the stone, and stole the body. Like, that makes no sense. But that was her go-to story. You know what? I want you to hear me on this. Each and every one of us has a go-to story for the things we go through. We all have a go-to story. And even if that story doesn't make any sense, it's the story that we know, and it's the story that we go with. Until, all of a sudden, Jesus encounters your version of the story and breaks it for you. And you know what? He broke it for me many years ago. He broke my version of the story. And he could break your version of the story and give you a better story. I don't know about you, but I would like a better story than my story. My story is no good, right? My story doesn't make sense. My story maybe makes sense in my head, but doesn't make sense to anybody else around me. If I share that story, they'll probably think I'm crazy. But Jesus has given me a good story. And Mary had her own version of the story. I want you to see this in verse 15. And it's really interesting to me. Jesus comes up to her and says, "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Now I want you to jump back, if you can, to verse 11, right at the beginning. And I want you to see this. It says, Mary was standing outside the tomb doing what? Anybody know? Crying outside the tomb. And as she wept, now I want you to get that, and weeping, she's literally like sobbing outside this tomb. And when she's sobbing outside the tomb, she stooped and looked in. And here's what she saw. She saw two white-robed angels. Okay? I want you to get how crazy her story is. She sees two angels, one sitting at the head, the other at the foot of where Jesus' body was lying. She sees two angels. Verse 13 goes on to say, and they go, "Dear woman, why are you crying? Because they have taken away my Lord." And I don't know, man. I think they lost him, right? I don't know where they have put him. Okay, so she is walking up into a tomb. So obviously somebody took care of all the guards. Somebody took care of the stone in front of the tomb. And then she sees two angels on the inside. And her version of the story is, somebody took him away. After all that, somebody took him away. And she turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus. But she didn't recognize him. See, what happens so often is that in the struggles of our lives and in the difficulties and the pains that we face and the things that we go through, those things are kind of like the tears of Mary. They become a filter through which we look at whatever is going on. And Mary's tears were her filter. And she couldn't recognize who Jesus was because her tears were just kind of getting in the way. Everything was fuzzy. Everything was blurry. And so often in our lives, that's what happens too, right? And so our thought about my life, or our thoughts about God, or our thoughts about other people, or our families, or work, or any of those things, our thoughts tend to be through this filter of brokenness. And maybe your filter is not tears and sadness like Mary's was. Maybe it is. But maybe yours is frustration. Maybe some of you in this room, your filter is hurt and pain. Maybe some of you, your filter is anger or bitterness at God or at somebody else. I don't know what your filter is, but I know that Jesus is really good at breaking down our filters. But whatever that filter is has led you to create a version of events about your life and about different things that you have believed to be true. That you have believed to be true. And for that reason, she cannot recognize that Jesus is standing right in front of her. And so it goes on to say, he says, "Dear woman, why are you crying and who are you looking for?" And I love this. She thought he was the gardener. I was at my house yesterday doing all the gardening outside. Any gardeners in the room at your own houses? All right, a few of you. Yeah. I had a gardener for years and years and years and years and years. And when that kind of ended, I decided that I'm just going to save some money and do it myself. We're in agreement on that. I'm not as good as the other gardeners, though, because they came every week. I deal with mine like once a month or something. But so yesterday was the day. I was like, I got a free day, I can do this. And by the way, I had a free day, but a whole bunch of the members of our creative production media team and all of them were here yesterday putting everything together. Can we give them a huge round of applause for all of them? They really have, yeah. So I was working on my garden, and they were working in the church. And so I'm cutting the grass, and I'm, doing the hedges or whatever, cutting stuff and, cleaning it up and everything. And I found this verse really interesting because she thought that Jesus was the gardener. I mean, I guess if you're going to have a gardener, the best one to pick is Jesus, right? I mean, he would be a really good gardener. But there's something about Jesus being the gardener that is important for you to understand that I never realized until just probably a few days ago when I was reviewing these verses. And I've never ever said this before. And it's something that just impacted me when I saw it. She thought Jesus was the gardener because they were standing in anybody know? In a garden. Yeah. It's like he wasn't the gardener in a high-rise, okay? Like they were standing in a garden, which is why she thought he was the gardener. I know this is like really simple. You're like, I came to church on Sunday just to hear that. Here's the truth. I want you to see this. For those of you that love studying the Bible, you'll find this interesting. For those of you that don't study much of the Bible, I'll keep it simple for everybody. But here's what we know. Right at the beginning of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, 2, 3, right around there, right at the very beginning, we know that God made Adam and Eve, and he placed them inside of a garden called the Garden of Eden. And it was inside of the Garden of Eden, inside that place, where they had access to full and complete life. They had access to everything they ever wanted. I mean, how many here like buffets? Any buffet people in the room? I don't know what's going on. We don't like soccer, basketball, baseball. We don't like buffets. Something is happening today. Okay, I love buffets. Anybody with me? Okay. Well, we're doing better now. All right. See, all you can eat, all you can get. I am happy with that. I'm good. And Adam and Eve were in the garden, and they had everything they could ever want. In fact, God would walk in the garden with them, so they would see God all the time. And they had all the food they wanted and everything they wanted. It was right at their fingertips. And in an instant, in the garden, they chose to disobey God. And when they disobeyed God, even though they had access to everything, they wanted the one thing that God wouldn't let them have. And when they disobeyed God, all of a sudden, I want you to hear this, sin entered into the world. And when sin entered, and everybody say the word death. Death entered into the world. Death came into the world because of what happened in the garden. So it's not a mistake that Jesus rises from the dead in a tomb that was located in a garden. It's a message that Jesus is speaking to us. But before I say that part of the message, I want you to capture this real quick. It's so important. Because for Jesus to be in that tomb didn't even make sense. My grandma, I mentioned this on Friday for those of you that were here, but for those that weren't, my grandma just passed away about a week and a half ago. And the last of our 4 grandparents to go home to heaven and be with Jesus. And she passed away, and she is rejoicing now in the presence of God because we got a God who is alive, right? But she went away. And there's so much cost, right, involved for my parents, not so much for me, but in doing a funeral, right, and all of those types of things. There's so much cost that's involved. And in those days, if you were going to be buried, you would typically be buried in a very typical cemetery like we would do today. You wouldn't be buried in a tomb. A tomb required somebody to have literally gone and excavated the rock out of that tomb and done all the work. Tombs were only for people that had tons of money. It was for rich people. Those were the only people that had tombs. They were like, I'm going to make my own special place when I die. And this rich guy, he offers his tomb for Jesus to be buried in. And it is interesting, because Jesus did not have a tomb. Jesus had nothing. He didn't have a home to go to. He didn't have money. He didn't have a tomb. So the tomb was lent to Jesus. I mean, the guy who was giving the tomb didn't think it was just the lent, and he thought it was forever, but Jesus knew that he was only going to use the tomb for 3 days. So, he was just lending the tomb to Jesus just for a few days. I'm sure that guy thought he got a good deal when Jesus rose from the dead. He's like, great, I can use it again, It's good. But it's not a coincidence that a tomb that Jesus could not have paid for is where Jesus ends up, which is right in the middle of a garden. He's sending a message to all of humanity in this moment. And here's the message he's sending. He's saying, listen, in a garden is when death entered into this world. But let me prove to you that in a garden is where life comes back into the world. And I have life available for each and every one of you. And like I said, I don't know this morning what your filter might be about God, what your beliefs might be, what your doubts might be, what your thoughts might be, what your worries, concerns, fears, whatever it is might be about God. I don't know. If I sat down to talk with you, I could, have that conversation. But there's too many people for me to know your own story and your own filters. But I do know this, that Jesus has a way of getting past those filters. And in the same way that out of a tomb comes life, you guys walked through this tomb this morning into a place of life. It was symbolic to say that it was at the tomb where Jesus defeated the power of death and brought his life into the world. And I want you to see what he does with Mary right at the end. He does one simple thing. He says her name. He calls her out by name. I want you to see this with me real quick. That even if you cannot see God clearly, he can clearly see you. No matter what your filter is, no matter what your blinder might be, no matter what it is that is causing you to perceive or not perceive, to see, to not see, whatever that looks like, of who God is and who he wants to be in your life, none of that is an issue for him because he sees you. And when he sees you, notice what he does with Mary. He saw Mary. He calls her out by name. He says nothing else. Nothing else. He just says her name. That's all she needed to know. I don't know what you need to hear from God. But I know that He's got the right message for you. And our God is alive today, and He was standing right next to her. She couldn't perceive it, but that didn't change reality. And maybe you can't perceive that God is alive today and available for you. But just because you can't see it doesn't mean that that reality does not exist. There are so many things in our lives that we cannot see, yet that does not mean that it is reality. Hear me on this. It is reality for the world. It may not be reality for you yet, but I know God can open our eyes to see it. And He can open your eyes too. And so Jesus says, Mary, and she turns to Him. She turns to Him and immediately recognizes who He is and responds to Him by calling you teacher. And I want to invite you today to respond. Now your response might look different from everybody else. But God invites us to respond because He is calling you out by name. If I knew the name of every person in this room, I'd go through this room like I was Jesus and just start calling each and every one of your names and say, that is Jesus speaking to you. But I can't do that, so you're going to have to take my word for it. That Jesus is speaking directly to you. He is calling your name. His eyes are on you. He is focused on you. And He has life available for you. Man, I have experienced great family. I have a good family where I grew up. And the family I have right now, I've experienced, I'm not rich by any means, but I've experienced comfort in life. I grew up pretty well. I've experienced a lot of the things that of what we can get in this world. I'm doing a job that I love to do. I love doing this job. This is the best church on the planet. I love pastoring this church. And at least I was more than the Dodgers got or the Lakers got. So but hear me on this. I've got a good life, but none of those things compare to the life of Jesus and what He has available for us. Naomi's going to be coming up and sharing a spoken word with each and every one of us. And then after she does that, I'll come back up and close us off with prayer.
Life starts here. You've been saying this phrase since the moment you stepped in. Maybe even in the previous weeks leading up to this day, hoping to grab your attention. This might even be the first time you're hearing this, so it's worth another mention. But let me tell you, life starts here. What? What does that even mean? It leads me back to ask the fundamental question we all have. The question that maybe drives us all in or drives us all mad. The question that might even hang a burden over your head. We've all heard it time after time, again and again. What is the meaning of life? We ask ourselves that question at one point or another. I looked it up, and the actual definition of life is the existence of a human being. The point between life and death. The point in time of being alive and having that strive and continuing that drive. But if that's the case, then how does life start here? We bring it back to Adam and Eve, the first two people living and gracing the garden full of glee, but also the first two people who were deceived. Now, don't shake your head at that decision. In a different time and a place, you'd be right there with them. Now you see, at some point or another, we will all face that moment, life with death as its final decree. But my friends, I have to tell you, that's not how the story ends for you and for me. Life starts here, because a certain man was born. Miracles were performed, lives transformed, some friends forlorn, skin was torn, but the crown was worn, humankind reborn. Death died when Jesus was crucified. 72 hours is all it took for Him to defy the final destination of you and I. In that tomb He no longer lies. Our sins, our fears, our pain, our end, no longer solidified. Life starts here. Because maybe it's not about answering the question, what is the meaning of life? But rather, who brought meaning to life?
She didn't just perform that, she wrote that as well. So give her one more round of applause. Can you repeat that phrase with me that's on the screen? Let's say it together. Life starts here. That's a phrase we use in this church all the time. And it has a lot of kind of layers of meaning to it. But for us today, how does life start here? It starts here, right at the grave. Can you imagine that at the place of death is the greatest victory of life? At the tomb is where the greatest victory was won. And you and I know this to be true. We all know this to be true. That when the defeat is going to be its biggest, the victory is the greatest. Meaning if you had a couple Super Bowl teams that were at 30 and 29, the game could go either way. But if you had one team at 30 and the other one at 5, and the team at 5 ends up winning, oh, that's an even greater victory. Am I making sense to anybody? Because of the size of the potential defeat. And Jesus, when he went to the cross on Good Friday, the defeat was real. At least it was perceived to be real. Jesus said that he gave his own life of his own decision. Nobody would take it from him. And so he gave his life, but defeat was there, and defeat was final. And in Naomi's spoken word, she said that death was defeated, or death died when Jesus was crucified. And Jesus comes 3 days later, and in what is the greatest defeat, he proves the greatest victory that has ever existed. And my friends, Jesus has life available for you and for me. Could you stand up with me today and allow me to lead us in just a moment of prayer? Let me pray for each and every one of you. Jesus, we are so grateful and thankful today that your life is real and present, available to us and with us. And Jesus, I pray that you would bring your life to each and every one of our souls. And if there is any person in this room who has been disconnected from the life giver, you, Lord Jesus, that they would today say yes to you. Because God, you are the giver of life, and you have it available for each and every one of us. With all eyes closed for just a moment, I want to ask you to think about taking a simple step in the same way that when Jesus called Mary by her name, she turned around and then she said, "Teacher." She responded to the call of Jesus. If you want to experience this life of Jesus, you can consider doing the same thing. I don't mean turning around or saying teacher, but you can consider responding to Jesus. And you can say yes to him, and he promises that his life will enter in, and that you and I will experience an overflow of his grace and mercy, and we will become completely, totally brand new in him as we receive his life in us. And with all eyes closed, if you today want to say yes to Jesus with your life, you can do that simply by just raising a hand this morning. I won't embarrass a single person in this room. I just want to see your hand so I can bless you and pray for you. That is all that I want to do. Thank you for that hand. 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 Thank you for this hand over here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the hand in the back. Thank you for all of you that are raising your hands right now. Keep those hands up. Like I said, nobody will embarrass you. I just want to pray for you. Thank you for that hand over there. Ushers, just walk around if we could and make sure to grab everybody. That is good. With those hands raised, allow me to bless your life right now. Thank you for your hands. May today be a day of new life for each and every one of you. May you experience the abundant grace of Jesus Christ, the life that only he is able to offer. And may today be the beginning of something absolutely new for each and every one of you, that you would walk into the life of Jesus. You would experience the grace and mercy of God, and that starting today, beginning today, your life will never be the same, because the presence of this living God is now present in you, in your heart and soul. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen and amen. right, everybody. We're coming to the end right now. I just got to tell you a quick couple of things. First of all, everybody say 2 weeks. All right, so lasting for, not in 2 weeks, okay, lasting for 2 weeks, starting next Sunday, we're doing a 2-week series, only 2 weeks. Now, we've called Black and White. Some of you heard it announced. Listen, this is a series focused on the middle space between the dreams you have and the completion of those dreams. And so many people in this room, you've had a dream. That might be a life dream, a work, a career dream, a relationship dream, or whatever that dream looks like. And then you know that dream that you have, that vision you have, that you've been living in this middle space and it hasn't come to reality yet. And living in that middle space is a difficult place to be. It sometimes gets hopeless, and you're like, man, I want that, but I'm not there, and is it going to happen? Or was I wrong to dream it, or whatever? And we're going to talk about that just for 2 weeks to bless your life and to allow you to have hope while you're in that middle waiting space in your life. So whatever that dream is, God has a purpose in that middle space between the black and the white, right? Between the dream and the completion of it. And so join us. So I want everybody to do something real quick right now. Just raise up a hand. Everybody in this room, raise up a hand. Just raise up a hand. All right. Everybody say this with me. Say, I promise to come for the next 2 Sundays. Oh, now you can't break it. You're doomed. You are doomed. I'm sorry. I know. I tricked you. I know I did, but you promised it too late. So we look forward to having you over the next 2 weeks. One other big thing is if you're here for the first time, I would love to give you, to get you a coupon for free coffee with our professional barista. I have to say baristas now because like all of them think they're pros. So there's only one requirement of what you have to do. Pull out your credit card, give me the numbers. No, kidding. Only one requirement to get your coupon for the free coffee if you're here for the first time. I will be standing in the lobby. All you have to do is come say hi to me. That's it. I won't pressure you. I won't do anything weird. I'll just shake your hand. Thank you for coming. That's all you got to do. We'll get you that coupon for the free coffee. So I'd like to just thank you for coming today and being with us. And to finish our service, as we always do, I can ask that you would just lift your hands like you're going to receive a gift from God. We do this at the end of all our services. I'd like to bless each and every one of you. I bless you this week with the grace of Jesus, that grace that sustains you every moment of every day. I bless you with the joy of Jesus, which will strengthen you as you walk every day this week. And I bless you today with the abundant life of Jesus. Live out the fullness of life that He has available for each and every one of you this week. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. Great to see all of you here.